stood out for you as you read this tonight? What is emerging in your consciousness as you've listened to yourself read Bill's letter?
I think just like thinking today about the line my perfectionist dreams and specifications and that doesn't that doesn't just apply to grandiose notions. I mean, I think that like um any expectation in my mind or that I'm bonded to, you know what I mean, that's out of step with the present moment. You know, that is like it's I'm not in if I'm fixated on that um some idea I have,
Yeah.
you know, that I'm not really like my feet aren't on the ground and I'm not really in touch with reality and my relationship isn't really with reality. It's with this like ghost that I've created in my mind. And there's just no way to really find purchase with that or like, you know, it's like I've never really been able to get ahead in life or to really find normal, you know, when I'm just kind of I'm fixated on my idea of a thing rather than the thing itself, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, see what you're describing there is where our relationship with reality gets fractured. Because as soon as you move in that direction and focusing on that should, because that's what that is, right? There's a tyranny of the shoulds operating in your mind, and it's telling you you should be this way. And our the system that we develop to support our false self, it's think of it as a pride system. It says, be like this and you'll be okay and you'll feel good about yourself. So these shoulds and these claims are so tied with that experience we're having of honoring these shoulds that we have in our life, right? Our really honoring our false self. And you described it wonderfully because when I'm focused on that and when my sense of self is anchored in that, I am out of touch with reality. There's no question about it because all I'm doing, I'm making everything about me and my false self. I am not connected to the world. I think I am, but I'm really not because I'm externalizing all this shit that's going on inside of me. You gave a great description of that tonight. Thank you, Patrick. I
Thank
love
you.
you.
Look,
You've been, I mean it from the bottom of my heart, you've been so instrumental in the success of this group with all that you do and, building up that incredible resource. I'm forever grateful for your contribution.
I appreciate you, all you guys.
Okay. Okay. All right. So we are on to step number 8. And let me go ahead. I've been had the urge to create some more slides for this, so I want to share them with you tonight. Well, we've been for several months now exploring the 12 and 12 and Bill's understanding in the 12 and 12 of emotional sobriety. Now, the best way to think about the perspective that we're using to go through the 12 steps is think of this as a second working of the 12 steps. Ernie Larson was very, right on. He had an incredible insight when he said in stage 2 recovery, which think of stage 2 recovery as dependent on emotional sobriety. In stage 2 recovery, it's necessary to take a second first step. And the second first step focuses on how our emotional dependence has created an impossible way of life and how we're powerless to turn that around. Just like we were powerless over our addiction, we're powerless over our emotional dependence until we own what we're doing. And that's what's so powerful about the first step. It's a paradoxical intervention. We change through owning what's going on, not trying to be something we're not. So that starts this whole movement, right? This, as I've said before, the steps are based on just what we call the biological imperative. If a desire, a need surfaces inside of me, I'm going to be interested. I'm going to experience attention to take care of that. If I want some stimulation, I'm going to pick up a book or watch a movie or play the guitar or go play tennis or whatever I'm going to do. And when I satisfy that desire, now I'm finished with it. So the way that we're wired is that we experience an awareness of a desire or need that mobilizes us. It creates a tension. That tension now mobilizes our our all of our systems, my intelligence, my motor system, all of me to take care of that. And if I take care of that successfully, then I'm finished with it and I move on to what's next. So we go through this what's called cycle of experience. Well, Bill captured that so well with the steps because one step creates a tension that's then resolved by the next step. And then after it resolves that tension, it creates its own tension that moves us into the next step, and so on and so forth. So we've been looking at how step four resolved the tension of step three. That step three was making a commitment to this new way of life. We're committing ourselves to growing up, not just going through life, but growing through life. Somebody used that in the meeting I was chairing earlier today. I really like that. Growing through life, not just going through life. And that's what we're doing in this second round of working the steps. So, step three was making a commitment to growing ourselves up. So now there's a tension. How do I do that? This is tangible. There has to be some tangible evidence of our commitment to grow up. And that's what step four is now make an inventory. So we sit down and we now resolve that tension that's created by our resolution from step three or resolves the tension of step three and now moves us to step four, which is now sitting down and taking a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. We become aware. Now we're now executing. This is our tangible evidence of our commitment. But now I sit with myself and I look at myself and I become aware of who I'm not. I like to think of it as an awareness of what's next in our life. So now step five comes along that starts to resolve the tension created in step four, which is now we sit and we're entirely ready to have these God remove these defects of character. It's about self-reflection and a contemplation of the function of our maladaptive behavior. We have to understand what this behavior is doing, the purpose of it, if we're going to let it go. So that's what happens on that step up to that point. Then step six or moves us, right? The step seven resolves the tension of step six. We're entirely ready. Now in step seven, what we do to resolve that, now that we get ready to let this go, is we identify our working point. We identify what we need to do to start to become what we can be, what we have to do to grow ourselves up or to continue on this path of self-actualization, of becoming differentiated. So the charge that this creates is now we get in touch with this imperative that I want to be what I can be. That's an incredibly powerful force that move us towards wholeness. And so that's what step seven is about. It's now the charge is a psychological imperative. I want to become what I can be. And so eight comes along and says, okay, you want to do that? Well, your first step is to become responsible and trustworthy. Start learning how to function in a healthy relationship. That's what we're doing in step eight. We are being responsible and becoming trustworthy so that we can learn how to function in a healthy relationship. So let's kind of take a look at what Bill says about step eight. So step eight is made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. Made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. Well, step eight, I think about it as radical accountability, right? So steps eight and nine is what Bill says. Steps eight and nine are concerned with personal relationships. First, we take a look backward and try to discover where we have been at fault. Identifying our emotional claims and demands is what I like to think about. So where we have been at fault is looking at how our emotional dependency has created these emotional claims and demands that then convert themselves into expectations, right? So we start to become aware of that and what that has done to our life. See, this is the second pass through the 12 steps. Next, we make vigorous attempt to repair the damage we have done. And third, having thus cleaned away the debris of the past, we consider how, with our newfound knowledge of ourselves, we may develop the best possible relations with every human being we know. Now take that in, the best possible relations. That's what we're going towards here, is learning what it means to develop the best possible relations. Well, you cannot have a healthy relationship without being accountable, without being trustworthy. You cannot be trustworthy without having empathy and without there being safety in a relationship. And you cannot feel safe with someone if that person doesn't take responsibility for themselves. So here we are on a whole new journey. Bill called this as kind of beginning of a new life, right? A life that is based on a very different set of ideas and principles that are they're an anathema to our false self. In many ways, they're the opposite of what we thought we should be. He goes on in talking about step 8 that it is equally necessary that we or extricate from an examination of our personal relations every bit of information about ourselves and our fundamental difficulties. Our fundamental difficulty is this idea that I have to have environmental support to be okay. I've talked about it before as this consciousness that says I'm okay if. That's our fundamental difficulty. It makes it impossible for us to grow up when I'm demanding that reality should conform to my expectations. Because then when reality doesn't do what I want, as Tom Rutledge pointed out to us, we become offended by reality. We object to it. We get angry with it. And when we're busy objecting to it and getting angry with it, we lose the opportunity to grow ourselves from the experience. So we fail to learn from our experience. And that's a serious impediment to growing up. Maturity is all about learning from experience. Bill goes on to say, since defective relations with human beings have nearly always been the immediate causes of our woes, including our alcoholism, no field of investigation could yield more satisfying and valuable rewards than this one. And then he says, calm, thoughtful reflection on personal relationships can deepen our insight. Wow. Deepen our insight into our emotional dependency and what is next in our growth and in our maturity. Only the best in us can see the worst in us. And only the best in us can see who we're not so that we have a chance to become what we can be. And we've got to remember that only the best in us can see the worst in us. Only the best in us can see who we're not so that we can become what we can be. So Bill goes on in the 12 and 12 and says this. He says, learning to live in the greatest peace, in partnership and brotherhood with all men and women of whatever description is a moving and fascinating adventure. Every AA has found that he can make little headway on this new adventure of living until he first backtracks, you know, and really makes an accurate and unsparing survey of the human wreckage he has left in his wake. When we are doing the second pass on these steps, we are looking at the wreckage that our emotional dependency has created. I cannot emphasize that enough, that we are putting on a lens that says, I want to see how my emotional dependency has impacted and the damage it has created in my relationships, how I've reacted to my dependency, what I've done to other people to, yield to my needs and wants, how I've manipulated people. This is the examination that Bill was talking about. He goes, we can go far beyond these flaws with where we were superficially wrong with us to see those flaws which were basic, flaws which were responsible for the whole pattern of our lives. Thoroughness, we have found, will pay and pay handsomely. So think about this call to action, this call to being curious about what our emotional dependence has done and how it has infected and informed all of our relationships through our entire life. Now, of course, when we start to head off on such an ambitious journey, and which most people would not want to do, we're going to encounter some resistance. And Bill has been great in this. And all along, he, as starting with step number 6, he's saying, pay attention to those forces that are going to interfere with you working the step you're on. In step 6, he was saying, pay attention to the fact that, quote, his words, character defect, which I just like to call, maladaptive ways of functioning, how those things served a purpose in our life, and how letting go of them is not as just as easy as say, I don't want to be that way anymore. We have to understand the function that they serve in our lives so that we can replace that function with more adaptive behavior. Well, that's the same thing he's encouraging us to do with step 8 as we begin this journey. He says there's going to be certain things that come in our mind that are going to discourage us from making a list and then taking that next step of going ahead and making amends to people. So one of the things that he was aware of is he says that we can have this idea that it's really, does it serve any purpose at all to pull these scab off of these old wounds? Shouldn't we just let bygones be bygones? Just let sleeping dogs lie. Why now create all this trouble in our life when it's in our past? Well, there's a good reason that we need to pull that scab off these old wounds because they're unresolved. See, you cannot become what you can be until you start finishing some unfinished business. Think of it this way. Think that you have a certain amount of energy. And let's say something happens in my life and I have some interaction where I do something that I don't feel very good about, but it never gets resolved. Now, I think about it afterwards. I might feel ashamed of myself for doing it, but I don't go back and I don't clean it up. I just bury it. Or we used to say we take it and we stuff it in our duffel bag. By the way, there's a lot of stuff gets stuffed in duffel bags. And if they were visual, we'd realize how much we're really dragging these duffel bags around in our lives. So even if you just use that image of what kind of energy it takes to drag that duffel bag through your life, you'll start to get a sense of the kind of energy we need to put out to keep that unresolved stuff at bay. As soon as we start to resolve unfinished business, we start to experience, we free up that energy that was tied to that unresolved situation, and it becomes available for us to function better in our life today. When you've tied up all that energy with all this unfinished business in your past, you don't have that energy available to you now. It's off fighting another battle. Says another thing that comes up when somebody starts to thinking about making amends. Well, why do I have to be the one to make amends to someone who's hurt me or wounded me? Shouldn't they be the ones that were making amends? Bill says you better catch yourself really quick if you're starting to think of that one. Because there's a justification, a rationalization. I'm not going to make amends until that person makes amends. It's tit for tat. It's emotional dependency at its worst. I'm not going to change if this person doesn't change. I'll say I'm sorry if you say you're sorry. Haven't you played that game before? Oh my God, I've said I'm sorry now, Julia. Aren't you going to say you're sorry to me if we have a fight? Now it's your turn. I've owned my part. What's your part? Oh my God, I don't, that's not why we own our stuff, not to manipulate the other person into doing what we want them to do. I take responsibility and I clean up my side of the street because I want to feel better about myself. I want to resolve those situations. I'm not doing it to get you to do anything. I'm doing it to get me to move in the direction of growing up. When we grow up, we stand on our own 2 feet. We don't make our behavior contingent on other people. He says you're going to encounter a fear of losing face. When you sit down with these people that you've hurt or harmed, you're going to feel really bad and you're going to have to now confront and see the disappointment or pain in that other person. And you're going to feel terrible about yourself. And that's why it is so important that when we approach step 8, that we learn how to support ourselves instead of turn against ourselves. If you turn against yourself when you're doing this step, it won't work. You're going to back off and run away because it's like throwing yourself into a pit of fire. You just can't stand it. So we have to be able to support ourselves, which means I am not defined by the mistakes I've made or the harm I've done. What is defining me today is how I'm taking responsibility for it and going to clean it up. So we have to focus on what we are doing, not what we have done. And that's why we say recovery happens in right now, not in the past. It happens right now with how you step up and take responsibility in your life today. And finally, he says a lot of things we just don't want to remember. I can't tell you how many people when I was working at the alcohol recovery services back in San Pedro and in Redondo Beach, California, these people would come in a program and I remember this one guy very, very clearly. He came in and he had 2 children at home. He was separated, divorced actually. And, he was starting to look at his drinking. He says, my drinking really didn't affect anybody else. I paid the bills. There was food always in the refrigerator and stuff. My kids rarely saw me drunk. I don't really think that they need to get involved in the program. It really didn't do them any harm. 3 months later, he came to group and said, "Oh my God, I was kidding myself. I was purposely forgetting the hell I put my kids through." And because I had him go home and I had him ask his kids, "Can you guys tell me how my drinking affected you guys?" With a sincere openness to hearing what they had to say. And what they told him shocked him into reality. He didn't want to face the reality of the damage he had done because in his mind that made him a bad father. The truth of it is when we start to take responsibility, now we become a good father. Once again, what defines us is what we're doing, not what we've done, and how we deal with it. So that's what I wanted to share with you guys today. So let me try to get out of here if I can. I always have trouble with this. There we go. Okay. Well, let me invite Tom Rutledge and Julia and Tom Potash into the room with me and and Patrick, why don't you join us tonight as well? And let's have a discussion of step 8, lady and gentlemen.
Mhm.
All right, who wants to kick us off?
Well, I'll just say that one of my favorite things about what we've been doing for the last whatever 60 years or however long this group has been going, it's is deepening our insight. To use that phrase, it's like we just keep coming and we come back around. We come back. I mean, the power of repetition, because it's not repeating the same thing. It's coming around, seeing it deeper and deeper. And I don't think it's just this, but when you were talking, one of the things that came to me was in terms of the eighth step, eighth and ninth step, is that my view of my past is not this. I don't have the same view of my past now that I had 10 years, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. It's like it is, I mean, I haven't forgotten a lot of stuff, but there is something deeper about it. There is something, sometimes I think it maybe I just had to get this old to see things, but I love it. It's like, 'cause one of the things I've always taught clients and workshops when we're talking about the 12 steps is I always laugh when people say, you know, well, I did the steps. It's like, and I always go like, that's sort of like having a box of tools and saying, I did the tools, and it's like, I used each one of those, a little bit. And it's like, but that's what it's the toolbox on the front of your cover of your book, Alan. I remember you talking about wanting to put that on there. It's like, no, this with time, we develop mastery over using these tools. And the tools are having to do with how we are relating interpersonally, but the intrapersonal part of it is that deepening insight. It's like, I mean, because I'd never thought of it. Every time we come back around, I get new things that I just never thought of, and I never thought about the idea that there was a reason that I did my eighth and ninth step earlier on, and then later, and then much later other it occurred to me that there were other people that needed to be on that list. And it's like, and at first I thought, did I just forgot? It's like, no, I don't think I was aware. First of all, I went through and said, if people weren't directly affected by me while I was drunk, then that didn't fit into that. It's like, so it left out the whole idea that in addition to being an alcoholic, I was an asshole. And because it's like, no, we're not just an alcoholic. We're not just dysfunctional, but when we're under the influence, it's not like we're perfectly healthy otherwise,
Yeah, that's
because
right.
I wasn't. No.
A
And
paragon,
I
a paragon of health and maturity,
That's
right?
right. It's like, well, and of course me in particular, because I was sober when I went to work, and I was when I finally got sober, I was the director of an alcohol and drugs treatment center. So I was the epitome of health and helping all those other poor alcoholics. It's like
What's
it
that quote?
it yeah. I always like to just toss this story in there too, because if you've dodged the label of alcoholism, you know how you did it. But one of the ways I did, because I was a professional and did this work, I would like to have I used the MAST a lot for the evaluation for the checklist for stuff, and I was always so proud because the having a DUI gave me 5 points. That would have been 5 points. That's a lot of points on the mast. It's like and I never had a DUI, and I'm so proud. And that's what I used to let me just say I'm not an alcoholic until a fellow in a meeting one time said to me. He just asked this question. It changed everything. You'll see how it works. He said, how many DUIs have you qualified for? It's like, what? Like, how about every day? I mean, it's like, so I started looking at that in a deeper way, but I also saw myself in a with a closer look and seeing in other relationships that really might not have involved alcohol use or drinking. They did, but I mean, it probably wasn't the focus. But that I I really had mishandled these relationships and was at least a crappy person, a crappy friend to people, and sometimes very much an abusive person to these people. And it's like I still remember that the most recent round of going through these steps and uh, and I didn't do emails and stuff like that. I did this whole thing with letters when I needed to write letters, and these were not people that I needed. It would not really have been appropriate for me to contact them by phone or show up. But it's like so I wrote real letters and put them in the mail and received letters back, and it was a wonderful experience because it just validated how important. Because I mean, one in particular, she just she was it was beautiful because she didn't, you know, the fantasy can be that somebody's going to say, oh, it's okay, you're wonderful, like, you know, it's like and she was not mean. She just said thank you for doing that. That was really hard. And you know, it really was a time in my life that our relationship really messed me up, and just validated the whole thing and said thank you very much for this, and you know, basically wished me well. And it's like it was very realistic, but it was I would have never known about that level of it in the first time through. So yeah, anyway, that's all I got.
Thanks, Tom. That's
Well,
great.
thanks, Tim.
I
Further?
uh,
Oh,
I,
go
I
ahead.
spent I spent a lot of my time in active addiction just kind of hiding out from people because I was walking around with so much shame because of all these unaddressed things and kind of like um, mistakes compounding on top of mistakes and offenses compounding on top of offenses and I'm like 7 years sober now and a couple things recently I've remembered incidents I've remembered that I'd forgotten before and it's always I mean there's always a fair amount of fear especially around the amends that I really need to make like those are the ones that I really need to make are the ones that I have the most fear about and I have the most difficulty getting out. But every time that I've managed to accomplish them, however imperfectly, I feel like my courage battery goes up a lot. And like in terms of developing the best possible attitude, and the best possible relation, it's with others, but also with myself. Like I don't in undergoing particularly this step and this part of the process, like I'm able to let go of a lot of shame and I'm able to actually live in a way where I'm not hiding from anyone. Because the thing is with unaddressed amends or things that I'm not really able to be open and honest about or really confront, it has a trickle down effect or like it has an effect. It reverberates through all other areas of my life, and I just like I'm operating on an essential diminished capacity. So like yeah, I had to make a very embarrassing amends earlier this year, and as Tom, alluded to with some of the ones that he made, there I got treated with a lot of grace, and like I mean, it's more often than not, like the people I've apologized to are like just they're so kind about it. You know what I mean? It's not always the case, but most of the time. And in any case, it's more about me being able to walk through that experience and own it and you know it's very counterintuitive. It's kind of like I'm placing myself in the line of fire, but like a lot of things with recovery, there's a paradox, and over time and with work looking to other people like you guys, and I just try to lean into it, and the more that I do, the more I seem to recover.
And that you're right, but when we say we're putting ourselves in the line of fire, I'm going like that's our selfish perspective. It's like, and what are we really doing? What are we really doing? We're not putting ourselves anywhere. We're just actually stating the truth someplace where it needs to be stated. It's like, and it's like, it's, I mean, to the step itself, it's irrelevant whether we're standing. It's like if we're standing in the line of fire, then so be it. And that's why you have to have courage to do it. That's cool.
Well, and what you're saying, Tom, is so right on, is that this step is really saying, look, it can't continue to be all about you.
Right.
That's the imbalance we have. And our self-centeredness, this idea that's Don Miguel Ruiz calls it our sense of personal importance.
Yeah.
We make everything about us. And it's very important. We're being challenged that we have to have an awareness on the other person for us to have a healthy
Yeah.
relationship.
Yeah.
It can't just be on my terms,
Yeah.
and what we're starting to learn is what a true partnership looks like. It's we and I,
Yeah.
it's so important that we start to get that learn how to balance
Yeah.
our awareness of self and others.
Right. Well, let me ask this of you, Alan, to be clear. After we finish the eighth and ninth step, we can go back to making it all about ourselves, right?
Yeah, definitely. Then it be
Okay. I just want to be sure I
No,
can
but
get back
no,
there.
what happens, what's so interesting, and that's why step not 10 comes along, it says there's going to be a tendency for you to slip back to
Oh
wanting.
man, no,
Oh,
no, yeah, that joke is
10
based
comes
on on
along and
yeah,
says,
on my personal
you don't
experience.
get to
Yeah.
do it. It's not a one-time deal, folks. This is an
Yeah.
ongoing thing because, what do we say that the Dr. Harry Tebow said the ego or our false self, whatever you want to call it, our emotional dependency, our making it all about us, has an uncanny way of showing back up again. I mean, it just
Well,
has an uncanny way.
yeah, we'll get to it in step 10, but it says when we are wrong, we promptly admit it, not if you're wrong, right? It's like it makes an assumption that I'm going to be
If
wrong.
if it happens to happen,
Yeah,
it's like
just
yeah.
Yeah.
I know it's a stretch,
Yeah.
but Julia, do you want to jump in?
Yeah,
No,
I
no.
would say selfishly, this is the step that helped me start to get right with myself.
Hmm.
Um, about taking responsibility for my part without blaming anybody else. And learning to be responsible so that I could look people in the eye when I talk to them. And to Tom's point, it doesn't matter who knows what I did, or even if the person doesn't know that I hurt them, because I know.
Yeah.
Right.
And I remember that now. When I think about doing something, I remember, is this going to hurt somebody? And there's still that little voice that says, well, they'll never know. It doesn't matter. My disease knows, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Well,
this is
and the other that's to the same point. Our recovery knows, and that's that recovery battery to use Patrick's analogy is like it really charges it when it's there really is a payoff in just being responsible for ourselves.
It's a recovery muscle, right?
thought,
Yeah,
right?
it feels good. I mean, really
Mhm.
does.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, recovery muscle like it's been atrophied. Yeah.
Yeah.
I used to get a little charge when I'd get away with something, right? And
Oh
I
yeah.
did
Oh God. I was
without a DUI. I still had, my job, a car, a place to live, my friends. And I was one of those people that came in and said, I haven't hurt anybody but myself.
Yeah.
But I too could have gotten many DUIs and deserved them. I didn't show up for my friends. I didn't think about them.
No,
And
and
I think
to your point, Julie. I promise, I took great pride in my ability to get away with shit. It's like, what was weird was when I got sober, I started feeling guilty, and I realized in my
for
drunken
you,
life
it
I
ruins
should have
it.
been feeling guilty, and I didn't. It's like so if I took the day off when I was sober, I felt horribly guilty, But how many days did I take off? Just faking like I was sick or making some story up about flat tires and shit. Never phased me. I
Yeah.
thought that was pretty good.
I had the worst tires of anybody
Oh yeah.
in the county.
I always say I can't remember if it was the flu or a flat tire, and I'm always ready to say, and if they correct me, I go like, yeah, changing a flat tire with the flu is not easy. It's like, yeah,
The good news is like I get a not a similar feeling. It's not a zing, but now when I own something and I take responsibility, it's also a good feeling, even if there's a consequence that I don't like,
yeah,
and that feeling stays.
It goes back to
absolutely,
our self-esteem,
yeah,
studies, right?
yeah.
So a couple of things that Alan highlighted in his slides, the stuff that I have like underlined and tabbed and stuff in my 12 and 12, and that first paragraph, it says like we develop the best possible relations with every human being we know. It sounds like emotional sobriety to me, right?
Yeah.
The best possible. It's still kind of like it's not going to be nirvana, but like hey, you can get to a place of being okay with the relationships. And the other thing he talks about being a fascinating adventure. And I just happen to be wearing my Everest shirt
There you go.
From Disney, which is the adventure up in Everest when you see the Yeti. So I guess my character defaults are the Yeti up on the mountain. I got to go explore and find and make friends with. Really, I don't want to beat them up or anything or get beaten up by them.
Love it,
Good,
love it.
good analogy.
The other thing about this step 8, and it ties back to step 4, is he starts to dig deeper, right? Alan's mentioning like this is our second round through on an emotional sobriety level, and he talks about the the subtler harms, right? And he starts to describe them being miserly, irresponsible, callous, cold, irritable, critical, impatient. That's all without alcohol in my system, right? This is not about when I was drinking, I behaved this way. This
Yeah,
is stone cold sober.
yeah.
I know that we've got some people in this meeting, not just the ones pinned up at the top here, who have decades of recovery. And that, for me, I started drinking when I was 10. I stopped when I was 18. That's 8 years of active use. I've made more amends for behavior post, you know, recovery, post that, day one, than I did for anything I did, during my drinking and using days. And that's after I came to my second first step in my, stage 2 recovery, emotional sobriety, where I started to realize like, oh, my emotional, tendencies and my dependency on people and things to line up just right have me just acting out in all the wrong ways and reacting to life in a way which made other people's lives and miserable. So Bill going through these and saying, okay, this is the next level. Look at these things in your fourth inventory, in your eighth step, was really, really important for me as I started to unpack this stuff.
Well, Pradesh, one of the things I just need to say is I hate people who do things early. It's like I mean, it's like you're the guys that give us a bad name, man. It's like,
I also prepare for it.
Well,
I make slides and all.
well, one of the things I wanted to address is I've been thinking a lot about this lately, and I've kind of revised my opinion on this, is that I used to say that our maturity stopped when we drank and used. And obviously it had an impact on our development, but I don't think it would have changed the course of things.
Mm.
I think that because of the culture we grow up in and because of the level of maturity in our families, is we didn't stand a chance.
right.
We just didn't. It's not, we can't pin this all on our addiction. This is the fact in our culture, the level of maturity is well below 50%. Let's say you're at 100%, you're emotionally sober and mature, right? We're hovering below 50% in our culture.
Mhm.
Not a good thing.
Right.
Not a good thing at all. And so to be healthy in this culture is to be unhealthy is really true. If you're adapting to this culture and you're making this thing work, it means that you've lost a lot of yourself. And what we're talking about is kind of it's a counterculture movement. which is we're really talking about things that are challenging a lot of the ideas in this culture about who we're supposed to be so that we can become what we can be. That this culture does not encourage people to be who they are. There's a big set of rules and ideas and a lot of emotional dependency, a lot. So that's so this is a it's wonderful we're doing the work. If we continue to raise our consciousness, we're helping the whole population, the universe grow up a little bit more, right?
That's right.
That's what we're doing.
The one thing I'll just add to what Alan just said is that, from my petri dish of of observation, I have a younger sister. We're separated by 2 years, so she kind of got the same era of family dysfunction that I went through, right? I've got some older brothers, but I'm closest to her. She saw this the same level I did. I became an alcoholic and an addict. She didn't. But similarly, her maturity stopped at a certain point, right? That she stalled in a way which had nothing to do with drugs or alcohol, right? It was just between the culture and the environment that we grew up in, we just stalled out. And thankfully I got to some recovery, which made it apparent just how immature and how much growing up I had in front of me.